very briefly. Again, the World Bank is not a party to the UNFCCC negotiations, so it's not appropriate for the World Bank to say what it thinks about the inclusion of the Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. What may be more interesting to mention, but I cannot say a whole lot about it because it's only beginning in the bank, is that there is a process of reviewing the implementation of our operational policy on indigenous peoples, and where that will take us, no one really knows. It's typically a long process, and then it eventually, ends up with a management proposal. That is a proposal of the management of the World Bank to the board of directors of the World Bank, which in the end makes decisions. So I just wanted to mention that. To the colleague who asked, okay, is the bank really serious about involving indigenous peoples? I tried to explain that in my presentation earlier, but in the context of the Forest Carbon Partnership Facility, we are very serious. As I told you, we have created an observer position which is currently occupied by Victoria. We have offered support to really help the observer play a very meaningful role and engage the indigenous peoples organizations around the world and make this a useful contribution to the FCPF. We have designed very specific guidelines and guidance. There's a guidance note that I refer to as well, called the Consultation and Outreach Plan. And as the name does not indicate, it actually goes way beyond consultation and outreach, and it does talk about participation. And so the expectation is that countries that submit a readiness plan also fill out this plan, which is part of it, and tell us how they want to then act at the national level. The good thing is that this is not going to be decided in Washington. It's a country-driven process, and this is going to be 30 different solutions to this problem, to this question, because there will be 30 different countries in the FCPF. And then, as I mentioned also before, we have received approval from the Participants Committee for directly allocating money to indigenous peoples organizations with a view to developing their own capacity to engage in dialogues on REDD at the national, regional and global levels. So I think that is serious, but as Kaveh said, the proof of the pudding will be in the eating. You will not be convinced until you see the results, and this is, of course, absolutely legitimate, and I will confess to you that I expect that we'll make mistakes, and to the colleague from the environmental law community, not everything is going to be a success, and out of the 30 countries I cannot predict how many will succeed in the short term, because everybody wants to see results in the short term. People say, oh, we need results before Copenhagen. Copenhagen is in 1 year. There's no way that we'll have full results in every country in 1 year. It's completely impossible. So how long will it take? At least, we expect to be able to continue funding, running this readiness mechanism until the end of 2012. If countries haven't become ready or are on their way to becoming ready by 2012, I think there's a real problem. Exactly what these problems are, it's difficult to predict now. To the pricing question. It's true that the World Bank has been operating a number of carbon funds. In fact, we were probably among the very first ones with the Dutch government to basically transact emission reduction purchase agreements quite a number of years before the Kyoto Protocol entered into force, may I mention. But the FCPF is a very different animal. The FCPF is not a carbon fund. It's not about buying carbon. It starts with readiness. However, it does have a carbon fund attached to it, because we believe that countries are not going to meaningfully engage in REDD unless they know there is an incentive for them to do so. I mean, what's the $4 million from the UN REDD program and the $3.6 million from the FCPF? It's nothing, right? And we've done technical assistance a lot, but where are we on this? Not very far away, not very far. So there needs to be an incentive. What type of incentive this will be, that is not for the World Bank to decide. There will be guidance from the Participants Committee, and there's going to be guidance from the negotiations. We're talking about payments, we're not talking about prices. We used to talk about prices, but now we in fact talk about payments because that could accommodate different options. It's not necessarily something that is then designed to put an emission reduction in the market. There could be other possibilities as well. But as the World Bank, we want to facilitate a public-private partnership. And the current financial crisis, you know, not to elaborate on it very much, but gives us all doubts about the market solution, but certainly gives us all doubts about the potential for endlessly finding public resources to finance REDD. And Norway was at this table, but Norway is an exception right now. Not many countries have come forward with, you know, the $3 billion that Norway has, you know, and Brazil is trying to raise $21 billion for the Amazon Fund, but it's going to be a challenge, you know. So we are open to all options. What we are doing, and this is very practical, is we're trying to get clarity on what it costs to do REDD. And as Gisela put it very nicely, it's not just about opportunity costs. There are also implementing costs. Once a country has decided to reduce, what is it going to do? Well, it's going to forego an income from not converting this forest into agricultural, pastoral, or mining, that we know, and there's a cost to that. But then it's not the only thing it needs to do. It needs to actually promote, I don't know, agricultural intensification, better cattle raising, you know, it needs to do poverty reduction, it needs to do better road siting, it needs to do a whole bunch of things in addition to guarding the forest. And that has a cost too. And we don't really know how much that costs. And so, unless we have a clear idea, it's difficult to then try and plug a payment, you know, and I think there were colleagues from Woods Hole here, there are colleagues from the Alternatives to Slash and Burn initiative at ECRAF. These are initiatives that are trying to understand how much it costs to do REDD on the ground, and that is really what we need to do before we start talking about, you know, fetish prices, I think.
Thank you so much, Benoit. Vicky, last word, and then I'll